Sir, is this relevant? We ruled out rockets and flying bombs on day one. We would have found the wreckage. There would have been a crater.
That, Henry, is a V-2 rocket, as I'm sure you're aware. On its own, not very interesting with regard to your investigation. But if you look at the transcript, it's frightfully interesting. It comes from one of ours on the other side. She took the photo. According to her, it was a test launch, not meant for us. They shot it straight up just to see how high it would go.
Henry scratched his head. With all due respect, sir, he swallowed, I don't see a connection here.
It was a historic moment,
continued Malcolm, as if Henry hadn't spoken.
At any other time, we would have celebrated this event. Because that thing,
he jabbed his finger at the photo,
that marvelous and terrible thing became the first object to leave the Earth's atmosphere. That thing, Henry, went into space.
Henry looked down at the photo again. It was indeed an impressive achievement, he thought. Then his look of confusion returned.
Look at the date, man, said Malcolm impatiently. It's from the night in question.
But surely a coincidence, sir. Like I said, rockets leave wreckage and craters, they explode. None of those things happened. It can't have been this rocket that landed in those woods.
Of course it wasn't, you fool.
Then, sir, I just don't understand. Henry Crinclaw was now desperate. Malcolm smiled. He was clearly enjoying being a step ahead.
That rocket, he said, had a trajectory that would have seen it land in the Baltic Sea, not in the woods outside Hurstwick.
Henry's face had given up, looking confused. He stared blankly as Malcolm Hayward continued to talk.
But we know it didn't land in the Baltic Sea.
He took the folder from Henry's hand and placed it on the desk, spreading out the photos of the wreckage. He stabbed a stumpy finger at each image.
That was found in Kent, that just south of Paris, and that was recovered from Blisna in Poland as part of Operation Wildhorn. All are believed to be pieces of that same rocket.
Malcolm's smile was widening as he realized Henry was starting to get it. Henry grabbed a pencil and rushed to the map. He drew a small cross next to Kent, another south of Paris, and a third next to Blisna in Poland. He then stepped back and placed his hands on his hips. Well, that is some spread.
Indeed, replied Malcolm, retrieving his gloves and hat from the desk. The boffins estimate the rocket came apart violently at an altitude of 60 miles. As it wasn't carrying explosives, we could only assume that it
hit something, Henry interrupted.
Bingo.
But what? What is there to hit 60 miles up? Nothing is 60 miles up.
Well, looks like you'll be staying here a little longer, Henry.
Henry didn't reply. He just stared at the map. Malcolm scanned the wall, putting on his gloves. His eyes moved from item to item.
I don't see the drawing, he said.
Henry frowned, trying to remember where he'd put it, then hurried to the desk and rifled through a box of files. Eventually, he removed a piece of paper and pinned it to the wall. It was a child's drawing of a man in black with very long black hair.
Did you find the boy?
Henry Crinclaw shook his head, not taking his eyes from the drawing. The officer doesn't remember much about him. Just a small boy with messy hair. It's all I have to go on.
Well, you'd better get to it, don't you think?
Yes, sir. I suppose I should. 3 months earlier. George Moss was under his bed. Just moments before, he'd been sound asleep on top of it. Now he was under it, hands clapped over his ears, waiting for the house to collapse.